Good afternoon, everybody. Again, this is going to be a webinar on cloud-based construction solutions for government. A little bit about myself. My name is Richard Morrow. I've been in the industry for over 25 years now. And during that time, I've worked with many government agencies and engineering firms along the way. I've been working in civil engineering and data management during that time, helping them and providing solutions to their challenges and problems. The last 5 years, I've been here at Imagine. A great place to work, and I enjoyed it. And 3 of those years, I was on site at Florida DOT, working with their data management environment there, helping and supporting. Now, my role has changed a little bit. I'm an engagement engineer at Imagine. So now I'm working more on a pre-sales type of a role where I work with agencies and engineering firms to address challenges and problems and find solutions for them. Enough about me. Let's continue on. To put this together, I started thinking about, what are some of the challenges that agencies have to deal with around data management in the cloud. So, one of the biggest things is obviously data management. That's a challenge that always, and that has to do with a lot with projects and costly and size and all these things that got to be taken into consideration. The other thing is, it's not just collaboration and communication between the agency itself and disciplines, but it's also collaboration. Agencies tend to work a lot with outside contractors, and now you have do you look at FTP sites, how do you work together, and all these challenges that are coming around us. So how do you address those, and how do you make that work better, right? And also, when you start looking at the field and construction and the in-house and all this, how do you get real-time collaboration and project access to everybody on the team? So these are things that we want to talk about today and provide some solutions around that Autodesk offers. And what is driving all this, right? So as we look at it, we have these complex infrastructure out there, right? And it's all aging. So when you look at that, it's driving it. The root of the problem is we have an aging infrastructure. We have more complex projects now, having to deal with more in a tighter environment and design this. And the costs are just escalating today. So that creates a whole lot of challenges around all this. So how are we going to deal with all this? So as the needs change, we're going to sit here and we try to look at how we deal with these challenges, right? So with the cloud, the advantage of the cloud is your team can work from anywhere on anything and get insight into your projects, adapt to changes quicker, and keep the projects moving forward, right? That's always a challenge with this. Clarity. So when I talk about clarity, you're looking at an environment and ecosystem within the cloud that allows everybody to connect and work together. Data moves through a system, right? And there are different groups, whether it be a bridge, survey, engineering, construction, all these different groups have to work together on a project. The project is made of all these different things within the ecosystem, right? And so what this does is allow you to work in a coordinated environment to minimize that loss and handling. And that allows us to deal with that and be able to minimize that loss and create more efficiencies as we move through this working in a cloud environment in a project-based one. Giving everybody visibility on the project team to the data, right? And what does this do for us? This minimizes the risk and the amount of rework needed because you're able to access everything in the cloud. Everybody's able to see what's going on in the other disciplines and being able to do a comparison and minimize that risk. So how do we do that better, right? And that's data-driven collaboration across all the teams and projects. So the important thing here is staying connected. So connected teams and tools, this is where it allows us to avoid that rework, because you're all working together hand in hand. And to maximize your efficiencies, right? So everybody's working on the same data at the same time on the same page, right? So everybody has access to the data on that project. And it's project-based data access, which is key to this whole thing. And then you started looking at design collaboration, right? So in the flexibility that gives. So one of the things that you're able to do from a cloud standpoint is look at it this way, where within the different disciplines, wouldn't it be great if you could put packets together and push that out and share that with the other disciplines so that they can consume that at a time when they've been able to review it before actually consuming that data and see how it's going to affect their part of the project, right? And so these are things that you're able to do now from within the cloud. So these are great, and you can see which ones you've consumed, which ones you haven't, and where you are within that. And that keeps everybody on the same page while keeping yourself up to date and seeing how that's going to affect your project. The other thing that needs to be, right, from a cloud environment has to be powerful, and secure. So one of the good things about a cloud environment, you can get it up there, it's secure, centralize your data, of course, powerful, gives you insights to your project. Say a dashboard where you can check the health of your project and see how that's going, right? At a glance. You can see where maybe there's areas in the project that might be being delayed, and how can we go look at that and reduce those delays, right? Because that again costs money. So these are things that you're able to work together with the agency can get a direct view into how the project status is and where that's going, and then work hand in hand with the contractor to improve those situations and see how to make that better, right? And as well as having all the security around that and versions and backups and everything else from design all the way through the whole life cycle. Today, in most cases, the environment you're working in, it's collaborative, but still fragmented, right? And what do I mean by that? So within, say, 4 main areas of design, you have design, plan, build, and operate. So you can have operation, maintenance, building, design, and planning. Over the years, they've figured out ways to create efficiencies basically within those areas, right? Whether it be email communication, documents, all those things have created some type of efficiencies within their own disciplines or areas of that being built, right? And that's good. So it's improved. But the challenge is still, for the most part, it's still a paper-based, PDF-based process, right? Not taking enough use of technology at this point. So, and again, as you look at these different areas here, you can see that this is where typically that sawtooth comes involved. There's a data loss at the handle, right? And as you get further along, that data loss increases, right? Which causes inefficiencies and things of that nature. So that's where we can gain our most efficiencies, is being able to work in a collaborative, seamless environment together and not have that data loss or minimize that data loss. So you look at this and look at the numbers. This is where a lot of that comes in with a fragmented environment, right? Just in the loss of the hours, right? Time wasted on, non-optimal activities. And, that adds up to a huge amount of money. you're looking at $280 billion annually. And this is just rework costs. And how did rework costs come into play, right? A lot of cases they come into play from the sheer simplicity of the loss of data in that sawtooth, right? And rebuilding of the data, where if everybody's working on the same data, models, and project from a central location, then all of a sudden you start to lower that number, right? And have less rework, create more efficiencies, being able to do things better and faster in a whole project environment, right? So that's the goal, is trying to get to this electronic cloud environment that has everybody on the same project and page, working together to reduce costs and ultimately creating a better project at the end. And so that's what we're looking at today around the cloud environment and how it's going to work for you. Autodesk kind of looks at this and made a major investment in this, and they kind of look at it from a way to improve this environment and create these efficiencies from, they like to call basically like 3 pillars, right? And so when we look at that, the first one of those would be around digitizing, right? So, part of that, getting that, having to be up in the cloud, is you're going to have a more digitized environment, having everything up there. So, moving more and more off paper and getting to that digitized environment is key to the start of this, so that decisions can be made, right, from a single source of truth. So that's part of the process here, is, looking at strategies and getting off that as you continue to move forward. The next thing that we need to look at here is around integration, right? So bringing those manual workflows and processes across from design and construction, where the data is lost in those, and bringing that all together, from financial to bidding to design to planning to construction, even into operation and maintenance. Basically looking at the whole life cycle and having that in a single location. That's where you start to create all these efficiencies. And lastly, what you want to look at in that third pillar here will be looking at optimizing. So how do we optimize those processes, right? When you start looking and going through that, capturing that critical information and improve that through the business and the project. Being able to extract powerful insights to the project, where you can actually start to predict a wide range of issues and challenges and risks even before they happen, right? So while also optimizing your data and delivery. So, that's one of the things that, we started looking at and Autodesk has been doing with their cloud environment, right? So we start looking at these 3 pillars and how do we improve all those within that environment to increase it and make it better. So when you start looking at that, the possibility starts with a connected collaboration. So what we want to have, instead of having those verticals, which you saw earlier between design, plan, build, and operate, we want to be that a horizontal connected environment where everybody's collaborating and connected, right? Whether it's from the drawings, to the models, the assets, the cost, the data, even the insights, which give you a look into the future, look at the current situation, and where you are within that project, right? And it's all project-based. So this is where, allows you to build upon this because of having all the data connected and electronic together. From, everybody being able to see versions, documents, what's going on, being able to look at issues, creating RFIs, all these things come into play, all the way over to handoff and starting to look into, when you get into operations and maintenance, the O&M, start looking at digital twins and how does that come into play within this environment as well, right? So when you start looking at that project or asset in the operations and maintenance and maintaining that through its life cycle, right? So these are things that looking at a connected, collaborative environment will give you the access to be able to do that. So I want to talk about a little bit about the evolution of how we got here, right? Because ultimately, you know, years ago, it started off, we basically had, you know, your project and your model in a single location behind a firewall, right? And a lot of us, you may still be doing this today, right? It's not that uncommon. That it was limited collaboration and what you can do internally working together and with the rest of the team. But it does give you the ability to, you know, work somewhat internally within your agency, but it's limited. So then we started looking at multiple locations behind the firewall, right? As an enterprise type solution where you start looking at networks in different locations and being able to maybe try to sync that data and being able to work at the different locations. And that works better, but it's still limited where people outside don't have access in, whether they VPN in. Then somebody has to, if they send their data in, you have to take that data from an FTP site and move it around. So, you know, it's a little better, but it's still clumsy at best and prone to error, right? So ultimately, what we're looking at getting to is, which is a true collaboration. And so when I mean a collaboration, we're talking about collaboration on a project level across all this, for all the stakeholders involved, right? Whether you're at the agency doing the design or the contractor doing design or the construction person out there building this in the field, or maybe the person planning. All these different aspects of a project working together creates all these efficiencies, right? And so, you know, the way that in the work that Autodesk has done around their cloud, you know, that's what looks at Autodesk Cloud Construction. There's been many evolutions over the years and different names as it's moved forward, as it's become stronger and stronger. And now the Autodesk Cloud Construction is the premier cloud solution for working with engineering projects in the cloud. And how does it work? So let's take a little bit closer look at the Autodesk Cloud Construction. So when I look at it, it kind of breaks it down. And one of the things that probably many of the agencies have today, they may or may not realize, is they already have, you know, part of this in play. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But basically, when you look at the cloud and construction, you know, you're looking at a baseline, right? So you're going to have a shared data with, you know, RFIs, drawings, specs, costs, all these things, photos, videos, all that shared data, right, across the board, insights into the project, you know, so you can start to get those predictabilities on that project itself. And then you start looking at the different aspects of it, right? The four pieces that we look at, from a design, a planning, to build, and operate, right? So those are all unique areas. And then the capabilities that the construction cloud gives you in all, right? So when you start looking at design, you're looking at, you know, the authoring, the design collaboration, working together, whether it be a Revit or Civil 3D, and we'll talk a little bit more about this as we continue on. And then you got planning, right, where you're looking at coordinating models, quantification, estimating, you know, all those type of things that try to figure out what is the best solution or scenario for their project. And then you look at build, right? Build is the key when you start looking at the construction and building that in the cloud. That gives you the opportunity to look at project management, cost management, quality, safety, even project closeout. So, you know, you're going to get into everything you need around construction in the field with build. And we'll talk a little bit more about all this as we move forward. And then there's operate, right? Operation and maintenance, you know, about the total life cycle of the project, looking at digital twins and moving forward into that aspect. So let's dig a little bit deeper into the cloud and the different products, right? So when you're looking at the cloud, the construction cloud here, one of the things I mentioned earlier that a lot of you may have part of this and not even realize it, right? So what I mean by that is if you have the AEC collection and you're using that, for each collection license that you have an Autodesk Docs license as well, right? And so the key about that is that's the foundation of the construction cloud, okay? Is Autodesk Docs. So that's the data management side of it, and the foundation that the document control, versioning, approvals, all this is sitting on that. So a lot of you already have, the base foundation access to this currently. So then it's just to look at where do you go from there, right? You also have insight with that. So that gives you some of the looks at your project, dashboard, reporting. Again, we talked about construction IQ, looking at your project, see how it's doing and the health of your project. And we'll talk more about that as we get on. But so a lot of you already have Autodesk Docs and maybe not even realize it. So that's one thing to consider as we start looking forward. The other thing that a lot of you have, all probably, is PlanGrid. And so you may or may not know that Autodesk had purchased PlanGrid a couple of years ago. And when the construction cloud, they moved to the construction cloud version of their cloud, Autodesk Build within there is basically, they took the PlanGrid and a lot of the tools and things around that, and it's like having PlanGrid on steroids, right? And we'll talk more about that. But you're getting all the project management stuff around there, as well as the data management, more powerful insights and RFIs and issues and all these things around that. So, that would be your nature going forward if you currently are running PlanGrid. So these are things to think about as we move forward in this, right? And then from Autodesk, you also have BIM Collaborate Pro. This is what gets you to the authoring, right? So if you're looking at those design applications, whether that be Civil 3D, Plant 3D, or Revit, you're going to look at Collaborate Pro. So that's really from a design scenario. And that's where you kind of build up off that. The other thing that you might want to take advantage of is takeoff. So this will get you into looking at the 2D and 3D takeoff, scope analysis, all these things around your model and what you can do with that. And again, we'll talk more about Build as the other module. That is the main module to when you're working with construction. So as we dig a little deeper into this, you can see what each one of these different modules kind of address and take, right? So again, from the docs is down here, handling all your drawings and insight, and then at this base level, right? But when you start looking at the Collaborate Pro, this is where you start looking at with the design, Revit work sharing, collaboration for Civil 3D, plan, as I was saying, change visualization, getting in there. Also looking at the coordinate, your models, constructability, scope analysis, quantification. Again, the build is where a lot of this takes place, right? So when you start looking at from the construction side of everything, this is where you get a lot going on with this module, right? From RFI, submittals, reports, daily meetings, all these type of things, cost management, right? Everything you need around cost management, even payment, forecasting, change orders, tying all this in around cost management. Quality planning and checking, punch lists, and these are all things that can be designed and adapted for your needs, right? We're not saying you have to use this. It can be made to fit your environment and what you're looking for and need around this list and different things like that, RFIs and all that. Safety. So you're also getting around safety and observation, inspections, all this time, mission, handovers, built surveys, getting into scanning and data management. So all this is part of this whole construction cloud environment. So let's take a little bit, kind of a high level at docs. So, the base level is Autodesk Docs and what you're getting. So as you can see here, you can come in. What do you get with Docs? Basically, you get access to the web and instructions to set this up, and you're up here, and you're not limited. You can set up any type of folder structure that you want. That has permissions, we'll talk about a little bit later. But you're able to set up and store and review and customize folder structures. You're going to have version control, file compare, markups, and you can do issues and all these things just from an Autodesk doc standpoint, right? As well as you have unlimited data at this point to put up. So that's really cool about what you're getting, and you're getting that just from having the AEC collection. You have access to all this information on the cloud. With the document control, this is to make sure you get the right information into the right hands. You have robust permissions that can be set on folder level. So you can come in and it's set whether people can view. You can tie the permissions from, a group or discipline, users, company. So there's a lot of different ways that you can look at setting up permissions within there. And document approvals, right? So you start looking at how are we going to work with document approvals. So what this does is help you reduce manual efforts and automate that review of the drawings, right? So we can set that process up, and it can be unique. You're not limited to it here. You can create your own process that the review is going to go through. And then that allows the right people to be the reviewers and the right people that are working and doing the work, right? So that allows you to go through and back and forth and publishing and sharing. So that gives you everything you want. With markups, you're able to come in here. You can do this comparison between the versions. You can go up there and mark that up. You can have private markups that you're doing for yourself. You can publish markups so other people are able to view it. You can even assign markups. So there's a whole system involved around that you're able to have. And it's all on a cloud-based environment. Very powerful. So it gives you document control, versioning, approvals as you move through that process. And again, the folder structure, so you can have your field and folders. It allows you to sync up project data, so you can have that locally synced up and be able to speed up that process. So when you're working off that local version, if you will, and not have to pull it from the cloud every time. So these are things that make that speed and efficiencies come into play to have everybody organized. And so why do we do this, right? Because you want to get the collaboration, get the right people having access to that data anywhere, anytime, right? As you know, our world has changed, and we have a lot of people still working remotely today. And with that, this cloud gives you the ability to, get past a lot of those challenges and create the efficiencies needed when working with multiple users, right? So that's important as you move through here, that you're able to get through here, work on that together. So when you start looking at the robust permissions, again, as I was saying, you can set up permissions on the folders at different levels, even at project level, who can get in there. And then you're able to set that by role, company, user, and be able to configure those permissions, right? You can even set it up on templates already. So when you start a new project, you can have a majority of that already set up. So it's really built to create efficiencies as you work together in a cloud environment. And I talked a little bit earlier about the insights. And so, you get this from Docs as well. So, this is a snapshot into the project. So as you look at this, you can see, where my project is, where it's at risk. And this is a configurable dashboard, right? So this is kind of like the out of the box right now, but this gives you insight just from the sheer thing of everybody working together, creating issues, working through the process from the construction side of, and all the information being populated within the managed cloud environment. You start to get all these things as a byproduct, right? So this is where you start to get into where you can do some of the predictive analytics on a project by looking at the trends that are happening within the project, and also being able to look at addressing those before they become larger issues. So those are some of the things that where you're able to start creating some of those efficiencies. And again, managed collaboration, as I was talking about earlier, it gives you packets, if you will. So, you can send off different packets and different levels that you, as you've made these up, then you can come in here and share them. And then the different disciplines can come in and review those and consume them into their part of the project, right? So this gives them the ability to look at how that's going to affect their project before they consume that. So those are things to create better exchange of data and create an overall better project and experience for everybody. I talked about markups, and so issues and markups, they all kind of go hand in hand. You're able to thumbtack those out, put those out there. So you can assign issues to people, place them out there, mark them, create markups, comments, even send transmittals, right? So there's a whole workflows and processes around all that you can use and make sure that you track open issues and that they get resolved and there's resolution for them. And that's all documented as part of the project, right? So that's where you start minimizing that data loss and information in the handoffs and going back and forth and even around markups. Class detection, right? So when you start looking at not just class detection and abilities, but when you start looking at utilities and horizontal class detection, that becomes really critical out there to minimize that risk and minimize that rework, right? And create those efficiencies needed. Being able to clash and make sure that the models are better. And this is all, it's all doing that clashing, allow you to look at all those, and you can mark those as, hey, I'm not concerned about these type of clashes, maybe you're concerned about other ones, and it gives you filtering as well throughout this whole process and everything that you're working with. Again, looking at the dashboard, being able to consume packets, being able to do class detection, issues management, model coordination, automatic class detection. So these are all happening on the fly. And then you can review those class detections, as I was saying earlier. And so you start to get a lot of automation when you're dealing with the cloud and going through that. When you start looking at that, you have docs, and as we start to look at the next step up would be when you're looking at authoring, right? So now when we start going from, okay, I go from just having documents out there and reviewing them and doing those type of things, that now I need to start doing design in Civil 3D. And so now this is where you're going to move up to Collaboration Pro. And that's the main thing that you're going to be getting with Pro is the ability to look at, and it's going to have your file locking. Also, you're going to have your data shortcuts. So, your derails. So it's able to come in here and manage those in the cloud. And what's really awesome about this from a user standpoint, your users don't have to learn a whole new environment on how to do that. What you'll see is when you do this, you get that little cloud icon here, and that'll be right next to your data shortcuts. And that's just showing that your data shortcuts reside up in the cloud. But from a user standpoint, other than them residing up in the project in the cloud, they work the same way that we're used to day to day. So, those are great things that drive those efficiencies and allow you to work in a collaborative environment. And that's the same thing when you move into look at with Revit and cloud work sharing, right? So, it's the same processes, but now that allows you to do a Revit work sharing in the cloud and being able to share that model with there. And that's going to work again with minimum disruption to the users, because it's going to work the same way they're used to work using work sharing, but it's just going to be a cloud-based version of that. So again, keep driving these efficiencies in production. The other thing we talked about earlier was takeoff, right? So takeoff, again, is going to allow you to get to your 2D, 3D takeoff quantities, scope analysis, all running on a document management system, right? So you can start, automating these quantities, as you can see here in the image, being able to pull that, whether that be horizontal or vertical, also being able to do takeoffs from that and quantities from your 3D model. So it allows you to do these estimates much quicker and better using the takeoff. And now we get into the meat of it, right? So as we look at this, we're looking at build. And again, you saw this is where the construction side of this comes into play, right? So this is where you start looking at, again, you can see issues and RFIs being marked up on the maps. You can get into connected RFIs, which also issues can be connected into those RFIs. Manage schedules. So you're able to get into managing the schedule and share and collaborate. So when you look up here and you'll see as we get into scheduling, it can suck in the schedule. That way everybody can come to a common location to look at and view the project schedule. And that doesn't matter if you're in the field or the office, right? So you have a single point. Everybody has that single point to go look at the project schedule and has access to it because it's just web-based and they don't need anything else to get to that project schedule. A way to simplify submittals and improve your meetings, being able to track comments made, links, essential, all the photographs and everything taken from the field are all held within the environment. So you have access to all that data instantly. And we talked about this earlier, but when you start looking at build, obviously you're going to have document version, controls, approvals, the cost management, so getting around budget, payments, cost forecasting, all this is part of build when you get into looking at all this. Safety, being able to adopt repeatable safety programs, get all the team members to take ownership of the site safety, quality management. So when we start looking at quality management, to track all the issues in one place, resolve them earlier, right? So this is where you start getting some of those benefits. Reduce the costly rework and keep projects on schedule, which is key, right? Because keeping projects on schedule is one of the largest drivers in creating and lowering that project cost, right? So keeping projects on track. I mentioned this just a little bit ago, but what we do from the Autodesk Cloud perspective when you're looking within this and build is we're going to suck in that project information, right? Whether it's from Primavera, Microsoft Project, and so on. And that becomes the point now, the location that people go look for, right? So that thinking is going to happen within there, and that's where people go look to determine what's going on, where the project is, the project status. That ties back into the insight we were talking about earlier. So this is what really a big part of this gets all tying in, keeps that moving forward. And the key thing is, they're not going, Autodesk looked at this, we're not going to try to reinvent the wheel here. We're going to work with industry leaders. And I think that's one of the key things that they started doing and understanding is we need to work with industry leaders in the different areas and be able to build this cloud data model, right? Where all your projects can live. So when you start looking at cost management, part of the model, some of the things within build with cost management, you're looking at controlling your change orders, manage payments, improve forecasting. So, manage control change orders is managing clear visibility impacts the overall project, right? When you want to manage payments, you can pay applications, track payments against the total work being completed, right? And that's key. So now you're getting all these percentages of work coming in here, and now that's able to be correlated directly back and to automate the supply chain and easily export these payments and applications into Excel. So These are all key to making this better. And then when you start looking at improving forecasting, you improve the cost, forecast accuracy with a centralized, because everything's being connected, including the cost activities. So because everything's in a single location and being pulled from there, that starts to drive these efficiencies for you. Managing RFIs and issues. And this is where, when you look at this from a plan grid perspective, we did this as well, but now you're able to do these much more better time to issues, get all this put together, great construction RFIs. One cool thing that you have here with the RFIs is build workflows, right? And those are you create your own customized workflows on how an RFI is going to move, how that will move through the process back and forth through being approved, back to the creator, back to the management, all the way through there. And the key thing is you can also take issues and link those to existing RFIs, while also being able to take, photographs, thumbnails, pictures, and document all that, and that's all going to be contained and connected to that RFI. The other thing, when you start looking at sheets, you're going to be able to publish documents to the field, right? And as well, I've been talking about the markups and creating and sharing. This all just comes as part of this, right? And when you get the sheets, you're able to do this and be able to get the sheets and publish those, ensure the team have the right access to the right information anytime. And you can also auto-sync these sheets and information into mobile devices, right? When you create markups, you're able to markup those. You can draw attention to the drawings and share them with your team for better collaboration, right? So also with these markups, they can come directly from the field, right? So if you're in the field, they can actually take a photograph of what they're talking about right there. One thing that's really cool, it's also spatially aware, right? So when you take that photograph with a device that is obviously spatially aware, such as your phone, it's automatically going to locate where that is and know where that is automatically. So you can say, oh, wow, that photo was taken right here. And you don't have to do anything extra to get that. So there's a lot of things that come with this that are just so powerful. You're also able to navigate 2D and 3D models from here. You're also going to have your mobile punch list, right? So these punch lists are easy punch lists. You can work them to closeouts on the project. They can be customized to be whatever you need them to be. So there's so many features that are here. And I'm going to touch on that in a moment. So what does ACC offer, right? So you're looking at collaborate, take off, and build as the main component there, with the docs being the fundamental layer of the document management. So you're able to address all these different areas. So when I start to look back at this, what is the Autodesk Cloud doing for us, right? Currently today in your agency, you're probably looking at some kind of fragmented source of truth, right? You're looking at something along these lines where you're trying to work together, but it is somewhat fragmented. Everybody's trying to figure out the best way. They're all a little bit different. They all have a little bit of challenges to them. But the key to making this work, and I hope I talked about this and showed this to you, is what we call the CDE, and that's the Common Data Environment. And so that's where the Autodesk Construction Cloud comes into play. It is the center of all this, right? So you have that one source of truth, that common data environment, CDE, that everybody is working off of, everybody has access to. And that becomes the way to drive all these efficiencies through the environment, right? So, one of the things with that when you start looking at this is, that's great, but if you're going to do this in all truth, if you will, that common data environment, there's a lot of things that you got to tie to and work with, outside of Autodesk environment. Well, Autodesk has been working together with them, with their cloud environment, to address this, right? So when you look at this, there's over 180 partners with direct integrations, right? And you look at all the names. There's quite a few, right? So from analytics to workforce collaboration, reality capture, and everything in between, right? So it is a very open platform that allows us to have everybody be able to work together and create their connections into that in this environment, right? This project-based cloud environment, which is Autodesk Construction Cloud. Now, in conclusion, we started off today looking at challenges that you're dealing with, right? Data management, project collaboration, and real-time project access. And that's for the office or the field. And so Autodesk Construction Cloud is the solution for you to drive your project and efficiencies from the cloud environment, from design all the way through build, operate, and maintain. Maintenance. So you can go all the way through all that. They are the solution for you as you move forward. Yeah, so hopefully you see that there's a lot to the construction cloud. And here to imagine it, we've been working very diligently on that with Autodesk. And if you think this could be of value to you, I encourage you to reach out to Imagine It or your Imagine It account manager, and we can take a deeper dive in your environment and see if the construction cloud would be the right thing for you. Thank you.